you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. When Aaron Lady sings, and that makes it official, ladies and gentlemen, live on the Chris Voss Show. As always, we certainly appreciate our family being here. We bring you the smartest people in the world on the Chris Voss Show for 15 years, and we just did the numbers in the last 4 years. We've increased the downloads on the show 1,405%, just the last 4 years, not even counting the whole 15 years, but we changed the format 4 years ago. So thank you for sharing the show, listening, and being the engaging audience that you are. As always, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, the only place we are on the interweb. Amazing young lady on the show. We're going to be talking to her about AI, artificial intelligence, data analytics, products, solutions, digital evolution, and all things that are happening in the world of tech today. Henna Karna is joining us on the show. She is a passionate tech entrepreneur and artist at heart with over 25 years of experience in leading product innovation across digital, data, and analytics. As a mission-driven individual, she focused on building industry-agnostic capabilities that leverage data, technology, AI, ML, and analytics to create risk, resiliency, and accelerate humanity's advancement, or AI's advancement to AI's detriment, or humanity's detriment. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. Welcome to the show, Henna. How are you?
I'm very good. Nice to have you. Great intro.
There you go.
There.
We need to accelerate humanity's advancement because we got some competition, I think, from AI. So give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs to learn more about you?
I've just slowly started a website trying to bring together some of the things that have happened in the last couple decades. And that would be hennakarna.com. So it's just my name. And then, of course, LinkedIn is another place to go. And there's on LinkedIn, you can probably find me through a couple groups that I'm part of. So there's a women's entrepreneur group. There's a Creative Destruction Lab group, and a few other boards that I'm on as well. So for sure, there's two ways to get to me.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview of what you do and how you do it in your words.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's start with digital, the world of digital. I'm not a native to digital, and I'm close to 50 almost. So definitely not one that grew up with the phone next to me. Still remember the rotary phone.
You and I remember dialing the phone and
yeah. When people called, you picked up and you said, hello, who is this? But now you know all this in advance. So from, I think, the world of where we had IBM, punch cards all the way to where we are now, there's organizations that are trying to shift to get to be very digitally heavy. And that meant, in some cases, being very tech savvy, being AI savvy, using data differently. So I love that space. I love the space of where we are bringing organizations or capabilities into the world of digital, and at the same time, pulling together the right skill sets, the right human beings, the right individuals to make that happen in a scalable way. So I kind of marry people, technology, and I don't want to say process, but what to do with that. What do we create in terms of value with that? That's what I do on a day-to-day basis.
There you go. And you do speaking and keynotes where you share your expertise with people?
Yeah, more and more. More and more. I'm reached out for board discussions. Sometimes at the board level, I'm on a couple of public boards, and oftentimes there's a lot of dialogue about what to do with AI. How do we get educated on AI? What's the right process to take? How many consultants do you bring in? What kind of people do you bring in? All of that stuff. And then for sure, there's a lot of keynote speech on the space of risk. Risk and insurance was the last 15 years of mine. And then there's a whole discussion around diversity, and not a gender or physical diversity. I mean, much more technical diversity. How do we think about a lot of things differently? Same problem, but solving in different ways. So diversity of thought process. There's a lot of discussions on that as well.
Diversity of the thought process. Yeah, we're going to need more of that. In fact, we may need diversity hiring support so that AI will keep hiring humans at companies.
Very possible.
There you go.
We're going to get more and more creative the more AI heavy we become. So that's
in fact, on that topic of jobs, I hear that more and more job recruiters are going to be using AI, where basically AI is probably going to look at your resume first and take the human choice out of it, which is going to suck for me, because usually I bribe whoever it is that I need to hire me for a job. No, I don't.
No. It's not that far right now, actually, Chris. So there's like these systems, right? Most companies use these systems to like look for the keywords or whatever.
Yeah.
So now you'll have maybe something more intelligent than just a keyword search that actually can look at the context of what you're saying.
Yep. This is why I've worked for myself since I was 18, is because I'm unhireable. You also talk about executive leadership as well. Any touch on you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is more out of experience and a lot of time being spent with HR departments in every organization that I've been part of, partly because we tend to look at the gap of skill sets in executives as something that is not easy to close. So we hire more. When something is different and new coming, Gen AI is a great example. We're going to look to hire people with Gen AI background. That's an immediate reaction. And when we think about executive coaching, it could be the opposite. It could be that we have to now figure out the internal model of internal training, internal upskilling, letting the individual be in the driver's seat as to where they want to go in that space. We don't do too much on that in industries, and I think that's a bit of a miss. The technology can help us learn as much as we can hire the next person to learn as well. We may need both. I think we need both.
So you're finding a lot of boards, a lot of companies are kind of trying to figure out how to gear this approach to AI. There's so much of it, and the scale and speed of it is just relentless. Like I remember adapting to social media when it first came out, and it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal, at least not for me. I understood it as social media. I mean, duh. But for some reason, some people needed books and everything else for it. But this is accelerating it fast. I think, what did it do? Just barely hit a 1-year mark for generative AI with OpenAI?
It's gone past Netflix and a couple other big evolutions in our day and age.
Feels like 3 years to me, and I'm still trying to figure it all out. And there's so many different, every day just new stuff hitting, and it's moving so fast. So you help companies and give them advice on how to navigate this. You go out and speak on it. What do you see the biggest challenges companies are having right now with trying to figure AI out or adapt to it?
Yeah, there's definitely a fear component, Chris. I'm not a historian, but oftentimes we look at history and we see anything that's a dramatic change. It's kind of it's met with quite a bit of resistance or distrust, perhaps, or maybe even more than that.
The Luddites sort of concept, right?
Revolutions where people die, not evolution.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of fear, but the way to mitigate that is to recognize I think of AI as three major sort of stages of where we're going to be headed. We're going to end up using the ecosystem more. So when we use it, so if I'm like a finance executive, I'm going to be able to lean on different parts of the components of the finance ecosystem more actively, because AI is going to give me that speed, that sort of holistic nature of things. Before manually, I have to do it all together. So manually, we run out of time all the time. But if you use AI for that sort of evolution, I can gain perspectives from so many different parts, bring it together really quickly. I might actually have a much more holistic lens than I did before. So it's going to play the ecosystem much better. Yeah. That's one major area.
I think creativity is going to be a big area for
the second one. Yes.
Generative AI. It's helped me be more creative. You got people writing whole books with generative AI and publishing now, and Amazon kind of starting to have a problem with it because they're just flooding the system, and sometimes they're just recopying books that were already made. But
generative AI helps with that too.
Yeah. But, for me, like I can put something in that I have a thought process on. It can help me flesh out the thought process for a book or something I'm writing on, an article. It can help flesh it out and kind of expand my original concept of ideas. And then I move everything into my words. But, it's kind of, if I get stuck, like if I get, you get stuck on a concept or idea. One thing that was kind of interesting I thought about, we have a lot of people that come on and talk about AI in the show. For some reason, it gets popular. I don't know. It's almost like it's a thing now. But one thing that someone brought up that I didn't get to flesh out on the earlier show was that even like lackluster or your bottom level employees, they can kind of use AI to cheat, where they can make it look like they're creative and they're coming up with lots of ideas and doing stuff. And I'm like, well, isn't that kind of bad? Because, maybe they'll get ahead of the really, truly creative and talented employees that you have. You won't be able to figure out who to fire anymore.
Yeah, there certainly could be a masking of things, right, at the onset. But that just gives us the ammunition to think about how do we look for success? What's the measurement of what's the KPI look like? Like what's a really good outcome or output in today's age? Maybe pre-AI it was different, and post-AI now it's going to have to be a little bit more, fine-tuned as well. So we should use AI to figure out the KPIs of the AI that use the capabilities that built the other stuff initially.
Do you think we need to be able to identify AI better so that we can separate who the true creatives are? Like recently there was a young lady who published a book that won a book award of some type. Somebody have to Google it. But basically 80% of the book was written by generative AI and 20% was by her own creative hand, by her own admittance. And she was using it to be creative, but she was pretty much letting her write 80% of the book. And she won a major book award, probably against other competitors that were creatives that, wrote their own work. And I know what that feels like, writing a book. Yeah. So what are some of your thoughts on that? And do we need to have like an asterisk, kind of like, the Hall of Fame baseball where, during the steroid era, they had to be like, well, these guys really kind of cheated a little bit.
I think that's a really good point. We know when we do research, we do references, right? We always have like there's a way to validate or verify what we're saying. It's not just Henna said so or Chris said so. Chris, you might have the right to do that, but the reality is we want to know that it was anchored on some other things. It had a precedence. So AI is something like that. When AI brings it together, it is a slew of other voices that it's collating. The reality is we should be able to give credit where it's due, where the roots were of that idea, and maybe we can't create the root all the way down, but now we can say we use Gen AI from these different sort of plethora of inputs that collated something like this. I think that's very important because AI itself is not its own being. It's a multitude of people that are contributing to that. Yes, it's brought it all together, but that book is not standing on its own, right? It's standing on so many other inputs. So a reference or a footnote or even like many footnotes that go across the areas in which she used it, I think that would be pretty powerful. Yeah. And it would give credit to her too. It would be good for her to see that as well.
Yeah. And it would be good for, like in competition to be able to say, hey, if you're gonna win New York Best Time Seller Book of the Year or whatever the hell, there needs
it better be yours.
the playing field needs to be leveled, I think. I don't know. Maybe I kind of feel when I say this like I'm some old guy, I'm Clint Eastwood on the lawn spraying the kids.
No, it happened with art. It happened with digital art, right?
Yeah.
When we first started looking at, comic books, for example, I just met recently a woman that does the comic books by hand still. She's still gradients, everything is done. It's beautiful. But yes, it's a lost art. I don't know, the value of that, particularly from an economic standpoint. But it's incredible work. And if I look at her work and what we print today, I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
But, there's got to be value in the fact that she hand does all this, right? There's something to be said there.
Yeah. And the hope is, from what we've talked with AI people, is that our ability to create as humans and use AI to create will make it so that we're not replaceable by AI. As much. And I'm sure that there's certain jobs and different things that are going to be replaced by AI, but maybe it will usher in a new value where we find our ability to use it as, a way, like I said, I use it to expand my creativity more. Sometimes it comes up with better questions for guests on the show than I would come up with.
That's all good stuff.
Yeah, we'll use it as a
how to change my car, update my Mustang. It knows that too.
Yeah. One of my dogs is going through cancer right now. And I was talking with one of my friends who has had several dogs go through this experience. And so I was getting counseling from him because he's been through that. And unbeknownst to me, he started jamming all the data from the analysis that we're doing, the tests we're doing into ChatGPT, and he started having a conversation with him to give us feedback on the best ways to treat my dog. And that never crossed my mind. I'm like, you're doing what with the dog's data? You're talking to ChatGPT? I mean, we're over here talking to doctors. What are you doing? But it was interesting, some of the things that it came up with, results and stuff. And I just never would have thought of that application at all. But
that can be a little scary, Chris. So I Google, one of the things I learned there was Google is overly conscious of the fact that it can be potentially, someone could say to ChatGPT or some system, my son or daughter has 102 fever. What do I do? What's the right number of Tylenol to give or Motrin? Which one do I give? And those kinds of questions become very difficult because if they require several other pieces that, of course, that system may not know to ask.
Yeah.
So the other,
I recommend give them 5 pounds of cocaine; it'll be fine.
It may. I mean, now we have it. I think Google's in sort of the response has often been that's a question that we should go to a professional for. Or we know that's what we don't do. So it does sort of disclaimer that, and maybe we have to know as human beings when to lean into some directional information with AI as opposed to a decisioning, criteria with AI. AI, I think, is more directionally used right now. One thing I would maybe suggest to think about with our listeners is that when we're in an organization, there's a lot of discussion around loss of job, right? Because you were mentioning also what jobs will stay and what jobs will go. And in my most recent, the last couple of companies I've helped sort of go digital with, we talk about these 4 kinds of jobs, right? There's one of those is like these rote activities. They do the same thing every day. It's not 9 to 5, but it's one of those things where it's a very process heavy. It is manually intensive, process heavy kind of job. So we call them manual jobs. The second one is like a build up. Manual jobs can become more like a builder. So they can take all those pieces and they can start to build things, build products, build solutions, build something. They're physically or intellectually creating information or building something, like an asset of the company. And the third pillar that we look at is people who are consuming those things. So they're like the analytically savvy people. They're taking the building, they're building information out of it. They're getting a customer point of view out of it, or they're figuring out the next company strategy. They're doing stuff out of that. So they're analytically savvy. And then the fourth are the ones that are at the highest level executives that are making it go. I know all this stuff now. Now I'm going to, move in this direction of this region or this company or this area, and they're actioning all that stuff. And today, on average, and I'm generalizing, this is a very linear approach, Chris. It may not be the same everywhere, but on average, most companies' jobs are in the first 2, if not the first one. And so, broadly speaking, in all the industries, holistically, it's the first 2. They're manually and they're analytical. And then when we have AI applications, what we would love to see is organizations have more analytical people and more heavy on I know what to do now. Like, I've got all this stuff ready. I know what to do now. I can be more actionally oriented. I think that movement's going to be amazing. So less manual, more builders, more analytical, more sort of, ready to execute on visions. That's what we want to do anyway. I think that's what the fun is anyways, for the most part, for most people.
There you go. Maybe we can have an AI that goes into unnecessary team meetings, and you start putting in the conversation, and then it monitors the conversation. It's like, hey, we can cut this short now. Here's the answer, and just everyone go do it.
Just like this one, it should summarize my answer right away.
But then it wouldn't be such a fun conversation and the human aspect of going back and forth. So yeah, it was just announced. This is on LinkedIn News again from an hour ago, but I believe this was announced yesterday. OpenAI unfurls AI-generated video, so they've kind of joined that crowd now. I know there's a few other vendors that do that. What are your thoughts on like OpenAI specifically? Are these guys really the true leaders that the future Googlers? I know that there's something we talked about in the green room also a day or two ago. They announced that they were going after Google search, basically, which is take a shot at the king, if you will.
I think there's so much room for so many great things to do, and so many companies have a lot to contribute. And there's the playing field is extremely broad right now, and there's a lot of room to invent and innovate and pay it forward. So for sure, there's a lot to be done, and I think we need all the high tech companies out there to start thinking about what they are already thinking about. How do we make it more useful, more consumption ready, easier for everyone to sort of lean into it. Of course, ethically all viable, and that's a big thing. It's going to become a big regulatory discussion, and strategically, but security wise, right? So, how does security play into all of this? There's a lot to be done in this space, to be honest.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great topics. The security aspect of it, it's really crazy. We had someone on the show who wrote a book about this, and they basically took Darwin's Origin of the Species, I think it is.
Oh yeah.
And they what's that?
Survival of the fittest, something like that.
Yeah, basically. And so what they did is they took Origin of the Species and they aligned it with what we're doing with AI, and their identification was that AI is going to become eventually its own species, and basically a species that may or may not compete with us. I suppose it's up to it, whatever it wants to do. And so, some of his concerns he brings up is, of course, tying AI to weapon systems where it can make decisions that are normally held by human beings right now. So, to launch a nuclear weapon, et cetera, et cetera. And he talked about, a lot of different paradigms of it. What are your thoughts on that concept or theory of AI being its own species eventually, or now?
It's a hypothetical. I would say, what do we define as species in our mind? On a typical basis, we think it's an organism.
Yeah.
We're bacteria organisms, electromagnetic, but we're also organisms that are biologically evolving. And in that model, AI is not an organism that's biologically evolving. With that said, I mean, right now, one of the third, we were talking about the uses of AI. So yes, ecosystem, creativity. A third one is going to be sensory. Just what do I wear and how it affects my body, how I do when I'm running track versus something else. All that's going to shift. And I mean, it's not mutating into our DNA, but it's certainly something like that. So I don't know if it's its own species, but it's going to help our species.
Yeah. I think he doesn't define it though by biology, but by being its own species in the sort of same vein where it's its own.
It
like
evolves on its own.
Yeah, it evolves on its own. His thing is where us as humans, we're limited by, I think we're limited in our view of life because our number one paradigm is to breed and survival of the species, propagate the species. That's what our universal paradigm. And most biological species or mammals, whatever you want to call it, they're driven by that. Everybody's here breeding, the snakes, the lions, the tigers, the bears, and that's kind of, what we do. As a man, everything we do to buy, we do it to impress a woman, make her happy, propagate the species, create a family, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing that he brought up with AI being its own species that will evolve and develop itself eventually. I don't know if it's quite at that point yet, but eventually, the concept is that it will turn that curve. It won't be limited by any of that. It's not trying to get laid in the backseat of a car on prom night. It's going to be thinking about things that we may never have even really considered as human beings, which is kind of extraordinary when you think about our run. But, it will probably be thinking about stuff and it may look at us and just go, you guys are really annoying and you smell bad.
Well, and we are based on fear. We're based on food.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. That's sort of the thing that our day in a life sort of evolves around. Yeah. And AI may not have any of that. It doesn't need food for sure. So,
yeah. And you nailed it right on the head there. We had a gentleman on the show talking about AI just 2 days ago. Oh, it was actually Mark Graney, who's written for Tom Clancy novels, and he writes novels for the Gray Man novels. But he went and saw military drills that were run with AI planes, where an AI is in control of the plane and there's no human being behind that plane. And these were run in a test facility. They don't have them out running around yet, but it was a simulator, and the attack mode of the AI plane, not having to think about, geez, I have a wife and kids home. Should I eject? Do I want to preserve my life here, or do I want to win this dogfight? They found that the aggression level of the AI far exceeded far and beyond humans' aggression level. Like it had no, and it doesn't need to worry about G-force when it turns a plane. And they found that the aggressive level against some of the best pilots that whoever this was, the Air Force or whatever, put up against it, they were beating them like 100% to 1 in dogfights, because the AI didn't have to worry about itself, didn't have to worry about its family, kids at home, didn't have to worry about preserving a life, didn't have to, take that extra second. Yeah, didn't have to take that extra secret, didn't have to hold its breath to, contain the G forces so the blood doesn't go their body and stuff and pass out. And it literally was just aggression, and dominance. And they just looked at it and they just went, holy crap. It just changes the face of war and everything if you think about it.
Well, and there's a good to that, and there's a difficulty part to that too, right? Yeah. So as long as we're fighting for the right thing, it's a great weapon to wield. And then the question then becomes, how do we decide what that is? But those are great moments where we can lose less of our humans, in scenarios where there's already such great loss in such situations. So that can be beneficial.
Definitely. And then, of course, we have people on the other side, China, Russia, that are pursuing the same sort of thing. And while we may not be tying them to NORAD or to missile systems, who knows what these idiots will do, right?
The question, it's like any computer, though, like any video game.
Yeah.
I know it's like that. Not to simplify it, but if I'm the person who's playing the video game and I'm the one that's controlling it, and I'm the good guy, I think I'm the good guy. I get to do the right things.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the moral high ground.
Exactly.
And the other person is just like, yeah, no, we'll win it on any cost. And so it was kind of extraordinary to me to think about, all these different things. You mentioned something about ethics and, rules and regulations. And, we call maybe have to get on the same page. Maybe we need to have some sort of UN or something of AI. But it's such a wild west right now and everything else. What are some things that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on?
One of the things that's been on my mind, I think, is how does on the topics of AI, how do we see the best use cases out there? That's a really big, common question, and it's always covered by we need to create efficiency in some organizations, or we need to do things faster. We need to do things, quicker. Everything from like writing essays or writing books to whatever it might be. And I wonder if there's, I don't know what your thoughts here are, Chris, but I wonder if there's a way to think about it much more around what are the things that we really didn't like to do as human beings anyways. And then, and it's not writing books. I think a lot of people actually really like to write books. But what are the things that we didn't like to do? And how do we use AI to start to resolve some of those very quickly? So something that's more meaningful, like, for example, we know climate change is a really tough one. There's not enough effort being put in it. Probably will never be enough effort being put in it. How does AI start to become our arms and legs and our sort of brain power in that space, which there's not enough of us doing stuff about it? So, is there a mechanism where we can sort of encourage or motivate organizations to start to lean on AI for the things that they don't make it the extra time for, they don't work on the weekends for? Those are the things that I'm really thinking about. Risk is when I think about the risk space, a lot of that comes up. There's a lot of things that are associated with the risk that we don't have time to think about because we're busy doing other things. Cyber risk, for example. I just had a colleague that got hacked by his iPhone, and all the bank stuff was taken, and the accounts were frozen. So now I'm wondering how does that happen, and how do we use AI to sort of mitigate these things? Like, do we create fake simulations that are just going to evolve faster and faster, and they're going to be fake, so they're going to allow us to be smarter about how do we really, recover from a fraudulent activity like that? Things like that. I wish we would spend energy on those topics. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Hopefully somebody's working on it. It seems like everyone's got an AI company. My dog's got an AI startup at this point, And you touched on something about industry and climate change. You've done some advising, I believe, to the insurance industry and their loss and underwriting. We're starting to see crazy stuff in the environment that it's really hard to, I think, at this point, argue. I guess there's some people that are going to still be Star Wars about climate change, but some of the crazy stuff we just saw in this recent month in California. Hurricanes landing and tornado, just weird, these floods in California. And you're just like, wow, okay. It's really starting to become hard to deny this stuff. But, then again, AI may just be like, hey, I know how to fix climate change. Get rid of all these damn humans that are polluting the place.
No. Well, I think we're the authors of this AI for now. Until that book comes to life. One of the things I tell insurance organizations, but oftentimes any financial services organization that didn't grow up digitally aware, I guess. I don't know if this will make sense to you, Chris, but let me take a crack at it, and you tell me if it's too verbose. I'm a mathematician, so oftentimes I think of X, Y axes, right? On the X axis is like the reason why companies exist, their why. They build products, they do services, all their whys. And on the leftmost side is like their version of their why. I'm very good at this, so I build these things. And on the right-hand side of that x-axis is the customer's version of their why. Actually, I need you to build this thing, and they're kind of like on the ends. And then you have this world where in a digital company, there's a y-axis that's been introduced. And that y-axis is around, not the why, but the when or the how. When do I meet? When do I interact with a company? How often do I interact with a company? And so if I'm a digitally enabled company, I'm living at the top of the y-axis and I'm 24/7 aware. I'm bi-directionally interacting with my customer. I'm actually like doing what you're doing. We're talking, we're interacting, and that AI is going to be so useful for that because no human being is there 24/7, but the AI can be. And on the very bottom, these are the companies that are, I renew my insurance, or it's auto renewed or whatever it might be, but it's once a year. It's very infrequent. In fact, I don't even know what I'm renewing half the time. It's just a policy, right? It just auto renews, and if I have a claim, then I go look into it. So it's very transactional. And we want these financial services companies broadly to be on that upper right quadrant. We want them to be bi-directional, 24/7, around when we need them. They know more about us enough to help us better, not to be in a creepy way, but to be more, responsive to our needs, our changes in our lifestyle, and so on. And we want them to know what we want them to build. Don't just buy it, build it and then make us buy it. Let us tell you what we want. And that world, sort of that digitally enabled world where it's bi-directional and it's outside in, that's an AI heavy world. And I think insurance companies aren't, we're often worried about what we are good at. And the frequency is very transactional. So we have a ways to go to become a digital company, I think, by the way of engagement, the engagement model, not because we have an online presence. That's a whole other thing.
There you go. I know that the insurance companies are struggling, and they've been pulling out of places like Florida and California. Evidently, California is the one they're pulling back on now, too. No. And I don't see, some of the crazy flooding and stuff helping. Do you think AI can help the business normalize and maybe get back on track to where it's good for everybody?
I think it's going to be so helpful, Chris. A simple example, so a lot of companies that I've worked for and worked with, they have lots of wording. So if I have a hurricane that hits, I have to know the hurricane wind name for me to know if I insured that. So I'm looking it up, well, does that house have that wind name, or did I cover that thing? And imagine Gen AI going right at it. It would just pull all the stuff together. It would tell you data. Yeah, it would be super. I mean, talk about those manual activities becoming much more, analytically ready. Yeah. We could do that. We could do that. Yeah. We could do that now.
It'd be great if it could solve cancer for us. That'd be awesome. Maybe it will someday. Who knows?
It can get us trends much quicker.
Yeah, it could put all the stuff together. I think at one point there was supposed to be a $1 billion database for cancer that was announced in the Presidential Commission, but who knows where that is. But trying to get all those thoughts in one place, but AI could probably pull them from all the different straws that are out there and maybe compile something. Of course, maybe it might just come up with, I know the way to cure cancer, just kill all the humans.
No.
There you go. Wipe out all the disease. Sorry, I've watched Terminator too many times, but there's still hope. Hope springs eternal because it's probably all I got left now. Final thoughts as we go out, anything you want to discuss or pitch out to people on how they can work with you, outreach to you, et cetera, et cetera.
It would be really great if there are like-minded individuals that are in their stage of their giving back model. You know, they've done a lot in the organization, they've done a lot in their career, and are looking to see how they can socially add value to communities. I would love to meet more folks in that space. I'm oftentimes meeting folks that either are looking to create that economic value, which is, that's very, very important. I know we're all in a business, but it's very important for me to also figure out that network of individuals that are trying to look at AI, look at data, look at technology, look at analytics, and go one step ahead, go one step beyond to start to educate others and fill some of the gap where AI could really add value. I think we got to make money. Everybody wants that.
Got to pay the bill.
Yes, but we also have to find the right use cases. I'll give you an example. I met a woman that is using AI to create mushrooms that eat trash so that we can reduce our footprint of it's fantastic. It's something I would have never thought of, but something great to look into. So things like that. I would love to meet people like that.
And then AI won't wipe us out because we're making so much trash. They're like, well, they're figuring out their problem through the help of me, so we'll keep them around for, I don't know.
That's right. We're still the creator. I keep reminding us.
Knock on wood. There's still time. So there you go. So how can people reach out to you for speaking engagements, board things, advice, consulting, et cetera, et cetera?
I think my website's probably the best one. So HENNA. So 2 N's right there, and then KARN as in Nancy A. I know people say karma, but it's actually just Karna. But that's the website, and I think there's a way to link to me from that site, and I'll get the email. Or any questions you have or any advice you have.
There you go. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Henna. It's been a great discussion. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Chris.
There you go. And thanks to RNs for tuning in and AI for letting us do this podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, the community.
Yeah. Thanks for our AI alerts for letting this happen. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTokity, and ChrisVossFacebook.com. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.